Oh, here we go, guys. We may be here for a bit on this one. This review is not only my favorite episode in the series, which, don't ask me why, I don't know why, but it's the first of 6 episodes on a disc, season 4, disc 3, for those of you who have the DVDs. This was always my favorite disc, the most watched disc for some reason. Because I'd say 5 of the episodes, except for maybe 1, are ones that I would always watch every time I would come across them. I don't know what it is. I feel like a lot of the most of the episodes on this disc have lines that, like you make the Seinfeld references. This disc I feel like had the most ones I made references to. I mean, there was a couple discs, I stand out to me, like, season 3, disc 3, that had, the red dot, the suicide episode with the introduction of Newman, the Pez dispenser, the Keith Hernandez episode, all those ones that just stand out to me, like, very firm. You can even say season 3, disc 4 was kind of that way also, and, maybe, there's a few of them also. This one, though, to me, was the most watched, I feel like. This is the one I feel like I would, if I needed a good laugh, I would always pull out this one. And, of course, it starts off with, in my opinion, my favorite episode, for some reason, the entire series, The Airport. Again, I feel like it's not the most popular one for most people. I love it. I feel like this is the one episode I can quote a lot of things from in this episode. This is one of those episodes, like, besides the inside look to find any other, behind-the-scenes facts, it's one of those episodes that, I didn't have to watch it again to refresh my memory. Like, I could literally almost name this episode word for word, because it was just one that just stood out to me. It was funny, had a lot of relatable things, a lot of things that stood out to me. It's also one of the first episodes. Well, besides, of course, I shouldn't say that completely, but in the inside look, Jerry Seinfeld even says this, where it was one of those episodes at the time where they realized that Jerry's character was okay to succeed on an occasion. Like, not end on a bad note. Because obviously, Jerry and Elaine, compared, experiences, on their flight home from St. Louis. Jerry had an excellent experience up in first class. Elaine had a horrible experience back in coach. Which apparently Julia Louis-Dreyfus said she can't, get on a plane without people making, jokes with her about, first class and coach and all that stuff because of the bad experience that she had on this episode. Which also, this is actually a fact I did not know. So Larry Charles, of course, was in charge of putting this one together, it sounded like. And again, Larry Charles, that I've learned, is the one that, puts together these, darker stories that, there was challenges to make it more funny, because if you don't make it funny, it's going to be, dark and sad. Originally, apparently, the idea for this episode for Elaine's story was that she was on a plane sit next to a passenger who dies on the plane. But they thought that was too dark, it wasn't going to come across as funny. And, I do agree there with Jason Alexander, who's said in plenty of episodes in this season especially, that if you thought they were stepping out of the comfort zone a little too much, I can definitely agree that was a little too much. What they did was perfect for Elaine, because I feel like there's some episodes, this one and also the shoes that's coming up at the end of the episode, where Elaine kind of comes across a little more as a petty complainer at times. Which, okay, in this episode I wouldn't say not everything is petty, but definitely in the shoes when we get to that episode, which that's another one of my favorites. That's another one as well. But, like I said, I'll be up here probably for a bit talking about this. This one's my favorite one. So, the story starts off with Jerry and Elaine are in St. Louis. They're driving to the airport. Jerry was in there for a show for a few days. Elaine came out and visited her sister in St. Louis. And they're talking, and Jerry's talking about how he has everything all timed out perfectly. They get back to the rental car place, and I guess they were a little bit late to be picked up by the rental car shuttle to get to the airport. Meanwhile, though, back in New York, George and Kramer are on their way to pick them up from the airport. George apparently lost a bet with Jerry, where I guess George was bragging about his vertical leap, and Jerry said, well, I'll give you $50 if you can, I'll bet you $50 you can't touch the awning and on the outside of his building, and George didn't come even close. So Jerry told him, if you pick me up from the airport, you won't have to pay. So that was the plan. But then Kramer went for the ride with him, and then George also was bragging about having the plan for the perfect pickup. Until Kramer took the Long Island Expressway, which, George was like, don't do that, we'll be stuck in traffic. And sure enough, they do get stuck in traffic, so they were already running late getting to the airport. So then George knows that, if he doesn't pick them up, then, he'll have to, what's it called? He'll have to pay the $50. So, meanwhile, Jerry and Elaine, of course, hurry to the airport since they missed the shuttle. Of course, there's the line where they're running through the hallways, and Jerry said, you gotta run like a man. Come on, pick your knees up and whatnot. Which, of course, I jag about that every time I run. Well, I only meant to. I wasn't at an airport for quite a while until 2018, but still, anytime I'm going somewhere with someone, I'm in a hurry. Like, come on, pick your knees, run like a man, come on. This would be goofy to reference an episode. Jerry and Elaine find out that their flight was canceled, and they're trying to find another flight to get to New York. Everything though, the JFK airport was booked, which is where Kramer and George were supposed to pick them up from. But the lady found there was 2 seats to a plane that was boarding, that was currently boarding, that was heading to LaGuardia. They were separate though, so they wouldn't be able to sit together, which like fine, whatever. But since the flight was canceled, they were going to be the same price because one was in first class, one was in coach. Jerry just volunteered himself for first class. Elaine was just like, why does she get the first class? And then Jerry says, "Why?" Because Elaine's never flown first class. Jerry has. He goes, "I can't go back to coach. I can't. I won't." So Elaine says, "Okay, fine. I'll sit in coach. The plane crashed. Everyone in first class is gonna die anyway." And then Jerry's like, "Yeah, I'm sure you'll live too." It was just, Jerry's like, "I'm pretty sure that Elaine would live," but So they get the tickets, and then of course they didn't really have time to call George and Kramer to tell them, that they're going to LaGuardia instead. So they had to find out when they got to the airport themselves. They get to the airport, of course, they're like a half hour late already, and the same thing happens. Kramer's telling George to pick his knees up and run like a man, which is funny. So they're trying to figure out if they had arrived yet or not, and they thought that the flight would have been taken off the board already since they already arrived. They look at the arrivals, and Kramer finds their flight and sees that it was canceled. And of course, George is now questioning, whether or not they get credit for the pickup. So Kramer says he's going to find out what's going on here. Until he sees another guy talking on the departures and mentioning their flight leaving at 8:30. Kramer keeps looking at him. He goes, "Did you see that guy? Like he looks very familiar." And he kept saying he recognized him, but he couldn't put the name to the face. Which George was not even bothering paying attention to it. So he tells Kramer to go figure out what's going on with Jerry and Elaine. In the meantime, George was going to go to the gift shop, which, oh crap, I forgot to mention it. When it went back earlier in the episode, whenever George is freaking out on Kramer for taking the Long Island Expressway, Kramer said they were probably going to get there early, and they said maybe we can stop at the duty-free shop. And they started singing a song going, "I like to stop at duty-free shop. I like to stop at the duty-free shop." Anyway, so George said, while Kramer figures out what's going on with them, he was going to stop in the gift shop and get a copy of Time magazine, because apparently there was a blurb about Jerry in there, and he thinks he may have mentioned George's name. And again, just Kramer's so obsessed and so focused, he's like, "I know that guy from somewhere." That guy he saw by the departure. Like, I know that guy. He had like a beard, he had glasses. He looked familiar, but he couldn't put a face to the name. But the face to the name. I'm sorry. So they get on on the plane. Jerry takes a seat in first class. Well, Elaine goes to coach. And of course the flight attendant first was like saying, "Oh yeah, first row, third row on the right." And then he goes, "Oh, you're in here, sir. Welcome aboard." And you seem a lot more cheerful. Elaine's in a sitting between 2 people. One guy who literally had like all of his bags and didn't check any in at the baggage claim. So already she's just like, this is not going to be pretty. And it was not. Because she ended up, having to go to the bathroom. She was very uncomfortable in between both those passengers. The one guy was snoring. The other guy was chewing her gum while she was sleeping. When she tries to get out, and after waking the guy up, she trips and falls into another passenger, and then she goes in back to go to the bathroom, um, and and there's a guy who walks out of the bathroom, which was Larry Charles. Larry Charles says this is one of the first times that he was recognized in a cameo, because he had a couple cameos before this. The previous ones I can remember off the top of my head was he was one of the guys in the parking garage that wouldn't answer Elaine when she was asking for help driving around the parking lot trying to find their car. He also, him and Larry David, if I didn't mention this before, was actually seen in the background in part 2 of The Trip whenever Kramer was being arrested at his hotel. But Larry Charles walks out of the bathroom. Elaine goes in there, but she shuts the door because he took a very stinky dump, which I'm sure we could all relate to that. Which one story I always think of is a couple years ago, I was at one of my friends' Christmas parties, I think it was. And my friend's mom was in the bathroom. She came out, and I went to the bathroom, and I was taking a huge dump. And I didn't want to say anything, because I didn't want to be embarrass her or anything. So I came out. My best friend goes in. He comes out. He's just like, "What was that?" But Elaine was just like already aggravated by trying to get home and not being able to get a good seat and coach, and what was that was basically was just not happy at all where she was at. So she goes to the bathroom and she had to deal with that. When she came out, the flight attendant was out delivering meals, and he was literally just like head back up just one row for Elaine to get back to her seat. But the guy was just like, "You're just gonna have to wait. No one's supposed to get up during the food service." And then she ends up getting back to her seat later on, didn't get a meal. The flight attendant didn't believe her that she never got her meal, and said the only meal that's left is a kosher meal. And of course later, which we'll get to, that in a second, but I'll hold off on Elaine's story for a second. Meanwhile, Jerry's up in first class. He meets a woman who's a model, and obviously super attractive to Jerry. She's shown him a lot of his stuff in the magazines and whatnot that's there, and all this other stuff. They're getting all this fancy food, blankets and pillows. They're getting slippers, which he actually put a slipper on Tia's feet as she was like Cinderella. They drank wine. There was also oh yeah, they were eating sundaes, and Jerry was making some joke about how it was a different way they put the fudge on the bottom or something like that. So they're like, I'm all happy. Then they cut back to a shot of Elaine sitting in between her two favorite people on the plane, and she was just staring at her piece of her kosher meal, just like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. But what to backtrack to a little bit a second though on that. But anyways, back at the airport though, Kramer's going to go figure out what's going on with Jerry and Elaine. George is in the gift shop. At the same time he goes to get his Time magazine, there's a prisoner there who wanted to get it too. George grabbed it right before the prisoner was able to reach for it. And and then the guy was just like, "Hey, I was going to grab that." And George was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I got you first." He goes, "I don't care what I got you first, I want the magazine." And then George goes like, "Oh, you don't understand. There's a blurb about me in this magazine." And the guy goes, "A blurb? You're a blurb. Check out the cover, you idiot." And then George closes the magazine and realizes the prisoner's on the front cover of the magazine. And then he wouldn't give him the magazine, and the prisoner was freaking out, and the guards who were holding him were pulling him back and whatnot. And then George was kind of rubbing him in the face, "But you're out there, you're out of your shackles." This guy's like, "I want in these shackles." And then he's pulling away, and he's like, "Son of a," and then of course cuts off before he can say, "Bitch." But pulls it away, and George just rubbing his face, working "I can't wait to read my copy of Time magazine. Maybe I'll read it tomorrow in the park. It's supposed to be a beautiful day. Have a nice life. Sense." And as he's saying that though, Kramer runs up to him, and he looks over, and of course he sees that guy he saw earlier that he recognized but can't remember who he is. And then he mentions how he found out that Jerry and Elaine got on a different flight, but they're landing in a half an hour at LaGuardia, so that we were going. And again, Kramer was just like, "Where do I know that guy from?" and he pulls him away. Now, meanwhile, back on the plane, though, the backtrack a little bit, before Elaine returned back to her seat, before also she had that altercation with the flight attendant for not letting her sit back down in her seat because he was just passing up her seat and whatnot. When she came out of the bathroom, they had announced that due to some equipment problems landing at LaGuardia, they were rerouted to JFK. So, which is where they were originally supposed to go to on the original flight. So back in New York, Kramer and George had arrived to LaGuardia. Kramer waited inside the car. George went inside at LaGuardia. This is also another scene I always love the quote. Well, no, wait. Back it up. I forgot to mention because I was almost going to say my favorite line in that scene. But as Kramer and George were driving to LaGuardia, Kramer remembers who that guy was. It was his old roommate, John Grossbard, who was always behind in his rent. There was one month where Grossbard had asked Kramer to loan him his share of the rent, which was $240. He gave him the money, but he just disappeared off the face of the planet. And Kramer tried everything he could to try to get in touch with the guy again, but he never got the money back. So Kramer wanted to turn around at first and go back and get that guy to give him his money back. But then George said, we can't do it, we got to go pay up Jerry and Elaine. Well, when we get to LaGuardia, George comes out and gets in the car and tells Kramer that the plane was rerouted back to Kennedy, so they have 45 minutes. And then Kramer was looking at the newspaper, sits down and goes, let's go. Goes, listen to the bell, Grossbard, it tolls for thee. Puts it in the gear and just goes... Every time I'm driving somewhere with my dad, we're on a trip or something like that, I would say, let's go, ready to go? Yeah, get in the bell in the car, and I go, listen to the bell, Grossbard, it tolls for thee. Now, I don't, of course, slam it on the gas, but we always jokingly go, like I said, I love this episode, I just love it. So, anyways, back on the plane, there was a deleted, it was not in the final edit, but there was a deleted scene where Jerry went back to Coach to see how Elaine is, which Elaine lied and said she was doing fabulous, but she was not. Jerry said there was an open seat up in first class if she wanted to sneak up. So this was on Jerry, but you wouldn't know unless you saw the deleted scene. So Elaine snuck up the first class, and she tried to fall asleep until the flight attendant there busted her and told her to get back to her seat. She just caused a big scene, and everybody at the time was napping and whatnot. Of course, Jerry didn't know it was Elaine who caused the ruckus, so he was just like, how rude of them or whatnot. Oh, well, I'll say it. I forgot to mention something else at the beginning of the episode, but I'll mention it when I get to the baggage claim. But anyways, back at JFK, Kramer and George arrive. They're in plenty of time for their plane to arrive. But then Kramer's checking out Grossbard's flight. He realizes Grossbard's flight leaves in 10 minutes, and he wanted to get on that flight to get that money off of Grossbard. So he was telling George to give him his credit card, and George's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then he goes, no. He goes, I'm going to buy a ticket to get on the flight. I'll get my money back from Grossbard. I'll get off the plane. We'll return the tickets for a refund. It won't cost you a dime. So then George gives him his card and says he has frequent flyer points on it. But then he tells him, though, to get 2 tickets because when they do the refund, he'll get double the bonus money. Kramer goes and gets the tickets, but someone talks him into Super Savers, and they were not refundable. So George was already, plenty of money, out of was already, much in debt already. So Kramer says he'll split it with him. They go on the plane. George says he's going to go use the bathroom. Kramer walks down and finds Grossbard, and he's pushing his hair back to make it all short and slick back as he used to. He's trying to see if Grossbard recognizes him. He's like, do you recognize me? And Grossbard's like, no. He's like, come on, 20 years ago. He's like, what? And he goes, 18th Street? He's like, I got no clue what you're talking about. And then he just, okay, no, just give me your money. And the guy's freaking out, but Kramer's so calm, it's just reached through his jacket, trying to find his wallet. As he's freaking out, George is in the back of the plane to go to the bathroom. There's someone in the bathroom. It opens, And it's that prisoner he took the Time magazine from. So I guess he was the only one in the bathroom and not the guards. So he yanks George to the bathroom, locks the door, and obviously to beat the crap out of him for not giving him his Time magazine. Kramer's being taken off the plane by security guards for, trying to, steal a man's wallet to get money that he had owed him. So they're taking Kramer away. He breaks free from the guard, and somehow Kramer got on the runway of where the planes were landing. And then as they're landing, Jerry looks out the window, and he sees Kramer, just running. He's just like, and then the shot looks like he looks up and sees Jerry. He's giving him like the, hey, buddy, look. And the plane keeps going. He's like, hey. He's trying to hold on and stay in view of Jerry. And Jerry's like, couldn't be. No, it couldn't be. Apparently, though, they actually had to do that shot. They did it, on the set, across from the Gilligan's Island set or something like that. They said, I can't remember what Tim Kaiser said it was. They had to put some type of a truck, a glass window on it, put a grip on the camera, and they shot it late at night. Kramer just had to do his best. Mike Richards had to do his best to keep up with the shot. So they get back to the baggage claim, and I forgot to mention but first, they're wondering where Kramer and George was, and Jerry's like, I got my bags, I'm ready, and Elaine's like, yeah, you got your bags. Now, I forgot to mention, when they were in St. Louis, when they were running late since they missed the shuttle from the rental car to the airport, Jerry was questioning how much to tip the baggage claim guy, in which the baggage claim guy said, he usually gets $5 a bag usually. And then Elaine basically just gave him a hard time saying he's taking advantage of them. So he put Jerry's stuff, of course, with JFK, and then because of Elaine's nasty comments, he put hers to Honolulu, Hawaii. So they show a shot of Elaine's bag in Honolulu with lays on it and whatnot, and obviously she didn't get her bag back. And then of course Elaine's like, worst flight ever, and Jerry's like, I know, mine too. And then Tia's walking past, getting all her photos taken, and she goes, I'll call you. And he said, yeah, definitely. And then Jerry tells Elaine it was a business thing, but meantime, they were going to be going out on a date, which she does appear in the next episode. But unfortunately, even though Jerry had had great luck in this episode, not so much in the next episode. And then Kramer, who again escaped from the security guards on the runway, comes flying through the baggage claim conveyor belt and just goes down the chute and just basically gets up like it was no big deal. Oh, ready to go? Yeah. Which Michael Richards said they did that all in one take, and it turned out great. So he got a little bit of a brush burn on his bottom, as he said. Jerry questions, where's George? And he's like, oh. And I don't know why. I feel like this was the biggest reason why I love this episode. When I was younger, I used to love this shot. They showed George on Grossbart's plane, he's all beat up, looking out the window. And of course, he can't hear it, but he just goes, always saying, Kramer! I don't know where he was going, but he went flying off. And that's how the episode ended. Now, an alternate ending was Elaine they're at the baggage claim, and Elaine goes, you wouldn't believe what happened to me, and Jerry goes, you wouldn't believe what happened to me, and then that's when he shakes his hand with Tia. And then George walks in and says, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. He's all beat up, and then Kramer comes flying in, they just leave. I also still find it funny in both versions that Kramer comes flying in from a conveyor belt for the baggage claim, and yet there was a security guard right there, and he did not even question what the heck Kramer was doing. I mean, you would have thought also, since he was, being taken off of the plane by them because of, him trying to take Grossbart's wallet, they would have been out on the loose for him. But again, I don't know. I just love this episode. It's one of my favorite. It's not one of my favorite. It's my favorite in general. It's one of those ones that, again, I literally wouldn't even have to go back and watch it to talk about it. But between the Grossbart storyline and just Jerry being happy-go-lucky, having the time of his life in first class, Elaine having the miserable time in coach, the prisoner in the Time magazine. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I love this episode. Like I said, it's my favorite. I can quote so many things from it. Let's do the bell, gross Bart. It tolls for age. But, yes. I just talked about the best episode in the series, which I do like the contest. It is definitely up there as one of my favorites. This, though, is still my favorite episode in the whole series. But, yes, a lot of great stuff. I could talk about this episode for days, but 25 minutes or so is good for me. But that is my thoughts on the airport episode. The next episode, Jerry did not have so much luck, and I will say it is because of just a scratch, or is it a pick? We'll talk about that. And also, in the next episode, Kramer is going after Calvin Klein. Why is that? You'll find out next. So guys, as always, what are your thoughts on this episode? What are your thoughts on the airport? Do you enjoy this episode as much as I do? If not, what's your favorite episode? Leave your thoughts down in the comments section below, and be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter at DemandAirborne93. Till then guys, I'm checking out. I'll see you guys all in the next review of this series. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out everybody.